Boom! We are live. First time back using the high quality software. Hopefully, we'll have some people. We have questions that show up. If you guys have questions, please post them. We will see them here, and then we will it'll pop up right here, like just like that. And it's like, look at that! Look how quickly and easy that is. Look at that.
Look at them fancy questions.
Look at them fancy questions. Exactly. Let's see here. Is there any other cool things I can do? Like the virtual background is in there. Video now live. It says yes. Thank you. We know that.
I'm too fancy for a video background. I got my Saved by the Bell shirt on, so that's kind of what I decided to rock with.
You want the rounded or do you want the square? You want the default? Just
let's go rounded. Let's go rounded.
You want to go rounded? You want to?
Yeah, we ain't squares
with the
here.
White, or do you want to go black?
Greetings, Gary. How's it going?
Let's see here. What kind of fun overlay can we do here? This is all new to us. Let's see. Let's have some fun. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay. it just blocks everything. Okay, let's do that. Okay, we can throw video clips. Oh, the background. Let's see here. What do you have for backgrounds? Oh, look at that.
I mean, look at that.
That's nifty. We'll leave it there for now, but we can actually upload stuff. Maybe this one will work. We can throw this up here. The only issue is that, once again, unless it's a banner, I mean, try that. Let's see how that one works. We can do that, and that just shows the book, but you can't see it anyway. So let's just go back to the cool little animated one. There we go. Hey, Gary. Reading. See, we get to do little stuff like that, just like that. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Okay. Like I said, if anyone has any questions, shoot them in the comments. Post them. I think no matter what happens, where they are, we'll see them, whether it be YouTube or Facebook or what have you. Let's see here, and just want to confirm. And how are you doing, William? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been spending the day working on some nice video content. Almost like I'm trying to work on like some movie style trailers to promote the new adventures and campaign settings that you and I are working on for this this new release of Ultramodern, with the luxury edition coming with it.
Yes, the new leather version, which is a little different. I know with Affinity and Amethyst, we're doing complete leather. We're decided doing a little different with Ultramodern.
Leather spine, correct, with a cloth.
Yeah, it's leather spine with a cloth cover. There's no real cost reason. I think it just looks neat, and we have a new logo that we're using on the cover, and a long story as to why we decided to remove the old logo.
Yeah,
very, very humorous story, which we won't get into unless people ask. But but suffice to say, it was a very, very humorous situation. I'm looking for the link to the landing page, and what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to see if I can embed that into we're at 17 days, 21 hours. We're at 782 people signed up. We want to get to 1,000 before we launch. Actually, technically, the best case scenario would be going to 2,000. But
we'll get to 1,000. But I mean, my goal is 2,000, and I think we can do it. I think as we keep going, we have a lot of cool things coming out. We have some people looking at our content, and we have people doing some reviews. And then, like I said, we have these movie trailers, and then we're going to sit down every Friday. You and I are going to do a nice live stream to talk about what we're doing. So, I mean, I got.
What are you doing now? What are you doing now, sir?
Well, me, like I said, I'm doing the movie trailers right now. I just did one for Threshold, about to record the voiceover, trying to work these vocal chops a little bit. I did one for Echoes 94. I'm just going to work on some new art assets for it. Then I want to do one for all the different stories. Like we have, what was the other one where I just finished the now I can't remember what it's called. Threshold we just did, which is one you're working on, a campaign setting. I'd love to get one done for Clone Fall, which I'm really excited to start writing. I haven't done much besides the draft for that one, but I love the idea of a cyberpunk scenario that's just about like, some heist type hijinks, some like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the Clone Fall, which, we haven't written all of it yet, but I'm excited for it. It was your idea, actually. Where did you get the idea for Clone Fall?
It was originally a It was inspired by a very, 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 very old adventure that I was a player in. Cyberpunk adventures, I don't know. I think Cyberpunk adventures really lend them to heists, which is the reason why we see it so often. So I think a heist story would be really interesting. So that's the approach. Threshold. Well, actually, we'll go into each individual one. I'm going to throw them up here, and we'll talk about this in a second. But we're going to go into these individual adventures since we're there.
Yeah, because that's that. I mean,
Let's let's go into
Ultramodern is doing
Echoes.
so well.
Let's do that. Talk about that one. Echoes of Noah 94.
This is one I wrote for you actually before we announced even doing this project. I just
Yeah,
want to write
which
content for you.
I still have it on a tab. I got to read it still.
One day you'll read it, right? Hopefully before we publish it. But
Yeah.
so this is you know me, I love sci-fi, and one of my favorite things, favorite movies was it Pandemonium that you and I watched? And you showed me that movie for the first time.
Pandorum.
Pandorum,
Pandorum.
thank you. And of course I love The Thing and everything else, but
Yeah.
so
Pandorum, but
Echo is is just my
big
love letter.
recommendation for people for Pandorum. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It is a film no one talks about, which really sucks because a lot of people are ripping it off and they think, oh, you're ripping off Alien. Like, no, they're ripping off Pandorum. If you ever played the game Nemesis, Nemesis is not a ripoff of Alien. Nemesis is a ripoff of Pandorum. So anyway, go on to your thing.
Yeah, well, actually, I bring up that exact same point in the intro. I talk about how this is my love letter to Pandorum and how it doesn't get enough attention. So this is, to me, it's all about colonies, the end of the world, like this future humanities, and these ships. They're called the Noahs, and because it's like, kind of like Noah's Ark. It's very like on the nose. I wasn't being subtle at all. And there's been 100 of them sent off from Earth, and in that process, you are on Noah 94, and you are woken up with an alarm going off, and then the adventure takes place with you not having any memory of who you are, why you're on the ship, and it's just a nice mystery, a little spooky as you kind of delve into Earth's fate, your survival. It's a lot of like I like to take tropes and subvert them a lot, and that's kind of what this is definitely a lot of that, which I think Pandorum did so well, which is why I think it's criminally underrated.
Yeah, I love. We won't go into spoilers, but
No.
it's a very, very good movie. It was badly marketed. It was like from the creators of Resident Evil, and then monsters in space, and everyone was just like, "Oh, it's a monster movie in space. It's Alien." And you watch and like, "Oh no, it's actually not that at all." There's some films that are sold very well, and Pandora was not sold very well, which is really, really too bad. Pretty good soundtrack, really great cast. I love Dennis Quaid is just fantastic in that. It's a very unusual role for him. Ben Foster is really good in there as well.
I was gonna say Ben Foster, I think, stole the show for me, but Dennis Quaid definitely had his big moments. Dennis Quaid's done some weird sci-fi. What was that?
Oh, yeah, obviously. I mean, obviously
Okay,
he did
come on.
inner space and obviously so forth. Yeah.
Oh,
And
Gary.
Norman Reedus in one of his earliest roles. And for those people who really want to watch it, if you really have not sold on it yet, watch it because Kung Lee,
I
UFC
was about
star
to
Kung
say,
Lee, is in the movie. He never
and
speaks English.
he's a badass in that movie. You don't need to speak English when you can throw kicks that high.
Yeah.
Gary says, for me, the cost shipping is important. Will you have different hubs that the books will be sent from? Chris,
Good
you're the
question.
expert on that. Yeah.
Yes. So when we switched, we were having some issues with shipments. And obviously, some of the biggest problems was Brexit. And Brexit kind of there were two things that are really missing international backers, which has really been hitting a lot of Kickstarters or crowdfunding campaigns in general. The first one involves Brexit, and the second one involves new EU policies that UK has also implemented. The first one involves removing the loophole that Kickstarters were using to have people avoid paying VAT. And whenever you saw the, friendly UK shipping, friendly EU shipping, is because they were circumventing that loophole, and now they can't do that anymore, which is the reason why you are no longer seeing. I am not seeing a campaign post those stickers in over a year because they know they can't do that anymore. They can't circumvent that. So unfortunately, crowdfunding backers If you have a value-added tax, you will be paying that, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it is, once again, nothing to do with crowdfunding. It has everything to do with your own government. So if you have a problem with the fact that you're paying value-added tax on a Kickstarter reward, unfortunately, you have to go to your government for that. The second one deals with Brexit. And the reason why I bring that up is that for a lot of distribution warehouses, what they do is that they ally themselves with other distribution warehouses throughout the world. So a lot of companies, for example, Quartermaster Logistics has one in the UK called GameQuest, unrelated to the GameQuest that we have in Prince George. But
Shout out to Games Quest.
yeah. So GamesQuest in the UK. So what happens is Quartermaster sends a huge shipment onto GamesQuest, and GamesQuest distributes it on their behalf to all, and it saves a lot on shipping because they're not sending individual units out. Now, when Brexit hit, the problem was the fact that when you this is how you got to avoid a lot of the VAT and shipping taxes. You dump into UK and then you ship from there. And because UK was part of the EU, you could distribute to the entire EU without having to worry. Unfortunately, since you dump into the UK, it's now really cheap for all those people in the UK. But the moment you go out of the UK, it becomes problematic. Now, we recently went on to Bridge Distribution. We'll talk about Bridge in a little bit. I think that they did a really, really good job with distribution of Affinity. They were obviously a lot, from my guesstimate, they were a lot cheaper than Quartermaster. And the more important thing is, like, there's been a lot of communication. A lot of people will know who backed Affinity that there was a big kerfuffle regarding a miscommunication of what was a standard and what was a leather edition. We'll get to that in a second. I see the comments. We'll post it in a second. So I feel so. So we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, they have a distribution warehouse in Ireland, and so I actually want to ask: is it Ireland or is it is it the UK Ireland or is it the EU Ireland? Because that can change certain things. But so far, when I was getting quotes for shipping for Affinity, I was surprised at how inexpensive the UK shipping was. So from my perspective, and in fact, some people have noticed when they backed Affinity and they were paying the final shipping fees, the UK, I think they were paying like $5 more of the estimate, which wasn't that much. So people who were backing it, and there were a few people backed it, so okay, this is not cataclysmically expensive. Same thing with that. Actually, no, I'm not talking about Affinity. I'm talking about Amethyst. Because Amethyst, when people were just closing up their pledges for Amethyst last year, and it turned out to be a bit more reasonable. And that's because we kind of fold in some of the costs for ourselves to keep it off of you guys a little bit. So some of the processing fees that Bridge hits us with, we don't pass on. So we do eat a little bit of that. But that's another story entirely. So in the answer to the question, I think UK and EU shipping, they'll be obviously more expensive because these things are coming out of the US, but they are very much not nearly as expensive as you might think. Now, if you live in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, in that area, yeah, you're kind of screwed on that. But I think everyone in New Zealand and Australia, they're perfectly aware of this. They know how much it costs to get things out to those locations. We had one person going to Singapore that was very, very expensive. So the answer to the question, if you're, and that being said, if you're a US backer, oh boy, is it cheap. Oh my God, I've seen the shipping
Cheap as
prices
it's ever
for
been. Yeah.
Oh my God, like it's like I've seen prices like if you're getting like one book, it could be as cheap as $15 or less. It's just kind of insane. So when there were people that were paying their shipping prices for Amethyst, they're like, "Well, I got a $2 credit. What do I do?" And most of them are just like, "Well, just eat it." Like no one's ever actually asked for the balance back. But anyway, so that's it. So I'm actually hoping that we are using different hubs. There's one in Ireland. It would be really nice if we had a new EU hub, and it would be cool if they had one because I know there is a separate hub in EU. Now, for those people who know about something like Awaken Realms, who do Nemesis, we just talked about them. Their production and their distribution warehouses is based out of Poland. So if you're in the EU, you get really cheap distribution and shipping. And if you're in America or Canada, you get screwed. And I know a lot of people that have been backing like their ISS Vanguard, their Nemesis, and that have been freaking out because their shipping charges are insane, like $150 to ship the ISS Vanguard to the States or Canada, which is really, really crazy.
Yeah.
You also have Go USA. Thank you.
As
Then,
the only American sitting here, I would say, yeah, go USA. I mean, Puerto Rican side, so we're limited there.
oh yeah, exactly. Well, well, come on, you're not really part of America. Have you heard about that, by
Yeah,
the way? That
yeah.
there's actually stories. There've been stories recently. There was a big story. I can't remember. Somebody was asking for a passport, and the person's like, "I'm Puerto Rico." And they're like, "You still need you still need a passport." And the guy's like, "I'm from Puerto Rico." And they went and they escalated and escalated and escalated all the way to the supervisor, and they kept on saying. And eventually, the guy got so irritable, the police showed up, and the police didn't think Puerto Rico was like. It came down. It was just insane.
Oh yeah, my uncle in '66, he was deported to Mexico because he was from Puerto Rico and didn't have a green card. And they assumed, yeah, he must be from Mexico and didn't know where he was at. So they drove him literally across the border, and he had to call my grandpa and be like, "I need you to pick me up and bring all my ID because I was just driven 6 hours across the border and dropped off."
So, anyway, so Corian, I'll hold my tongue. Okay, so the issue with Bridge. So here are the positive and negatives. So Quartermaster, I think I won't speak ill, but Quartermaster is very, very expensive. And their issue was that a lot of items were arriving damaged. And we were having issues like with Ultramodern. Our biggest issue with Ultramodern is that I had to send out nearly a dozen replacement units to people because the rewards arrived damaged. Part of that, I will admit, was because of our printer Togo. Their quality of book their quality was not as it wasn't just enough. As I found out later, I did not care for their quality. They did a really good first run when they did the black and white Ultramodern, which you can buy in stores. They did a pretty good job, but when they did Ultramodern, I was not impressed. And we ended up having to replace a bunch of books, but it didn't help that Quartermaster had an issue. Bridge have fantastic boxes. Like they have really good shipping. Nobody, actually, that's not true. Of all the, even though there were more Affinity sent down Ultramodern, I would say I had maybe 20 Ultramoderns had to get replaced because they either arrived, they were defective, or they got damaged in shipment. One of them was a retailer, which really sucked. But Bridge, I've had one person come back with a damaged box, and it was pretty minor. It was kind of a crushed corner. The
Yeah,
issue
mine was
with them
beautiful.
the issue with them was the confusion between the luxury edition and the standard edition, and the issue primarily stemmed from the way China labeled the box. They labeled standard and then deluxe. So I say the standard and leather. And so when it was looking where it said this person gets the luxury version, they someone there just didn't know what the difference was because the way I labeled them and the way China labeled them were different, which was annoying. So we kind of I do know that somebody was let go. They said this person is no longer with the company because obviously they sent out nearly 22 units to the 22 incorrect rewards, and we are still currently trying to get those back, and we are hoping that we're going to get the our standard versions from those people back because they will have received their proper luxury versions. And I've said people that we are not a big company. We are not. If these people don't return these rewards back, it's actually going to hit us financially to the point that we only have a handful of affinities left in storage, and so we kind of would like to get these 20 back. But that was a mistake. Bridge, they've owned up to it. And as for the time delay with Bridge, the issue with Bridge was the fact that when our shipment arrived, they were moving warehouses because they were upscaling to a much larger warehouse. That was the first thing. So there was a month delay because they were moving all of their stock to a new warehouse. And then there were two really big campaigns that preceded ours. Marvel Zombies preceded ours, and that took a very, very, very long time. So we got dumped to the kind of the back end, unfortunately. So even though they got our shipment in the end of November, we also got hit for some reason. Our shipment got seized and held at the border for nearly 3 weeks. Once again, random stuff. The first when Ultramodern hit distribution, went to distribution, it was like 2 weeks and it was there. It was very quick, and because it didn't go through any, we paid a customs fee. Boom, it was there, done. But for some reason, there was a massive delay getting it through customs, and even Bridge was not like that's not Bridge's fault. And then I said the other issue, of course, is with Marvel and so forth. So even though they got it at the end of November, the distribution didn't start till fortunately the end of February. So we had to wait almost 4 months. But now that they have their larger warehouse, they have more staff. I'm confident. I'm not a person that's willing to just dump a company based on a mistake like that. I'm willing to give it another chance. And a company that owns up to it and admits to it and compensates us, I'm willing to give them another stab. So we are following through with them with Amethyst. And if they drop the ball again, then maybe we'll go with somebody else. But there's the
Yeah.
answer to your question.
The ability to like own up to things and then grow from there is really important for me when I deal with customer service. And I order from companies for my other business, like from all over the world. And so that's a really big thing. You can say like, hey, we messed up. Here's how we're gonna make it right. That's an important customer service trait that all these big companies don't really do. So it's good that Bridge did that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, all Americans look alike. We all know that.
Yeah, all Americans look alike.
Oh, right. Oh, Corey, you got
Corey was number one. Corey was the number one. We were actually, we were
so
talking
you're
about that
backer
not long
number
ago.
9. See, the funny thing is that I know people go, well, don't you know who I am? I'm like, I have no idea who you are because your Kickstarter ID and then like the ID on Facebook will sometimes be different. So some people are like, oh, I'm this person. I'm like, okay, and then I'm like, oh, you're this person, and like so. I have a list of people which are kind of like my core backers that have always backed everything that we've done, and I don't realize some of them are Facebook friends because I can't connect them. Some people are like some of my friends I know that their names are consistent, so I know exactly who they are. But there's at least 5 or 6 people that have backed everything I've done, and I don't know who they are, even though I know that they go through aliases in different formats. But yes, yeah. So anyway, so Corey said to me, I thought because I was such a big backer that you sent me number 1, and I said no, it's purely random chance that you got number 1, and I'm glad you got number 1 because you've been such a big backer for us. I think you've backed everything we've done, so I was very happy that you got number 1. So I haven't decided if we're going to do a second printing of the special edition. If we do another luxury print, it won't be numbered. It won't have the inserts. So it'll just be the leather book. So there's going to be something unique about the first 100. Those first 100 will have the signed print. They will not. They had these inserted posters of the original covers as well. So there are these 4 little images in the leather edition. If we do, we haven't decided if we're going to do one. If we do another leather print run, it will not be numbered and it will not have that in there.
So you will be the only number one.
Yes. The funny thing is, William doesn't have one. I don't have one. So my version back there is, you can't see, my version back there is the prototype. So I have edition 0. It doesn't have a sign, doesn't have the posters, and it's the prototype. Eventually, once this whole issue has been settled with Bridge, I'm gonna get all the other remaining leather editions sent to me because they're not going into retail. So which means if somebody wants one, they're gonna have to find me at a convention and then buy it off me personally.
CamCon, right?
How many? Yeah, which means I have to get my ass in gear. How many were returned? Are you referring to how many well, we know that at least 22 people
books.
got. Yeah. So, and those people are just now getting their rewards, so we probably won't see those return standard editions probably until July, knowing my luck. Yeah.
I love the name Triumph and Blender.
Is there a reference to that? I mean, it's a great name, but yeah, that's one thing. This new company, Round Color, they're amazing. Oh my god! Like Togo, the issue with Togo, and I might have to turn off my backdrop so you can see it because if I do this, you're not going to see it. 1 second. Let's see if I can get my my backdrop turned off here. It's unfortunately no, I still have it on here, but anyway, okay, we'll go back. So you can't really see it too well, but this here is no, that's not it. There it is. There it is. So this is one of the alt covers of Ultramodern5. We're not printing this exactly like this. This logo is going to get swapped out, and unfortunately, and if you can see that, can't really see it, unfortunately. Nope.
Chris disappeared. What a magic trick.
Yeah, is that the way they glue it? They glue a part of the spine directly to the page, and unfortunately, this has a tendency of tearing, which is what's happening here. And that was an
That's old
issue
school
that
textbook style.
yeah. So if you look at the inside leaf here, you can see that they've glued the last page to the second to last page there, and that's how they keep the spine in hand, which is great unless that glue phrase, and that's what a lot of these versions have been doing. Now, when I received the luxury, the deluxe slipcase version for Ultramodern from Round Color, because they did a run of those, I was amazingly impressed at their quality. And if you saw the Affinity special edition, we went through it. The page weight is insane. It's glossy. It's got this, it's almost a metallic sheen to it, which is really, really nice. The leather is really tight to metal stamping. I mean,
It would give you one hell of a paper cut.
It is a hell of a book, and I've shown it to people. And every time I'm at a convention and I've sold a few of these, I show them the book, and it's an instant sale. It's astounding how good looking they are. So I'm really hoping that they follow through. Plus, they send me junk. I mean, they sent me this cool little calendar when you tear off and it creates an image across. They just sent that to me for free as a thank you. So yeah, and I also, unlike a lot of other companies, this is one of the few companies where I can actually talk voice on Skype with my representative in China. I find it very unusual that they like using false images. Like they don't let themselves know what they look like, so they very often put images of models. So every single representative is just the most handsome or gorgeous looking person ever. And then I take the image, I put it into Google search and go, you're not this person. Like, yeah, nobody here does that. I'm like, that's so weird.
It's
And I'm
like
pretty sure her
MySpace all
name.
over again.
Exactly. Honestly, triumph and blender was a phrase I said once during COVID before trying my hand at Twitch. So through all your blunders, you will triumph. To my player, when I was trying to brand, they said triumph and blender, and it stuck. That's how DSX Machina happened, by the way. I was going to call my company Slipstream Entertainment because I didn't want to be vain to say, oh, I'm going to put my name in my company. And my collaborators at the time, there was about 5 of them. Cam Louder, Conan Veach, Chris Brown, Skylar Dundalk, and so forth. It was Cam that said, if you don't call your company DSX Machina, you're wasting an opportunity. And all my friends said,
unfortunately, when you put your name together in an email, it looks like DSX machine.
Yeah, So, and then as a result, we didn't really foresee the fact that people were like, I can't access your website from work. it gets flagged, and I get emails back from people. Like we were doing promotion for the Gourmet Arts Festival, which William and I are also working on, and I get people who are like, by the way, I think your email is incredibly inappropriate. It's not very business savvy. Sending out messages to businesses with that email, and I'm like, my name is Chris Diaz. It's a play on Deus Ex Machina, and eventually I got so annoying that I just switched to another email, to the Prince Gastronome email, for all those purposes, because it was coming back just like,
you should switch it up to just DEM, just like DEM, and then it's just at Gmail, whatever it is, you know what I mean, like just DEM.
Oh yeah, DS Sex Machine. Yeah, that was basically the and most people don't notice because obviously if you're a game publisher and it says DS, that's why whenever I type the company name and I give the email to people, I add the capitals. Even though you don't need to add capitals in an email, I intentionally add the capitals so that people know that it's not DS Sex Machine, it is DSX Machina. The number of times, or the number of people who know the company name who say Dias Ex Machina, I want to slap the shit out of them every single time they say that. Deus Ex Machina. Like, oh, for God's sakes, does nobody know Latin? Anyway, let's get back into talking about so O and 094, inspired by Pandorum. Is it a dungeon, like a big dungeon map?
So this one is kind of like your classic dungeon crawl, but through a ship. And there's many directions you can go, many rooms that are, mysterious as you're trying to learn who you are as a member of this crew, the Noah 94. So it is definitely dived into more like that kind of like old school style, like slog through, but a lot of mystery and things to discover, and a lot of it's not just it's definitely more of a mystery horror than it is that I would call it than a straight up dungeon crawl, but it does have that
Mm.
same feel of like you move from rooms, explore, and you might miss things. You can run this game probably 3 or 4 times to different groups, and they'll come up with very different facts and understanding because there's like I wrote a bunch of things like cool tech logs to find. There's journals. There's like just a whole world behind it. Just like things you can discover because I love that about certain video games where you could just like you just pick. I'm the kind of guy when I play Skyrim on my second playthrough, I start to read the books you could find in Skyrim. I just like to just kind of learn a bit more about what's going on. So there's a lot of that content in Echo that I like, and you start to develop your own opinions of like what's happened. And I've ran it twice now for 2 different groups, and they both had extremely different playthroughs. And it was a lot of fun to run, as well as I'm looking forward to someone running it for me, and I can play it. But yeah, Echoes definitely has that. It's a mystery horror, but presented in that the map style of an old dungeon with lots of rooms to explore.
So someone was making a comment here. I guess we have a lot of ads running, advertising these things, and yes. So yes, there was the controversy a few weeks ago where we were using one of the illustrations from Ultramodern, which, by the way, like I said, remind people, Ultramodern originally published in 2019,
Mhm.
and I make that comment because in that book we have this cover here. Which obviously is inspired by John Wick 2, which apparently is itself inspired by a Two Gun Gussie or something, which is a
Yeah,
poster from
from like
1912.
yeah, I was gonna say from 1915 or something like that.
There a non 5e game called Outgunned has a similar image. I think ours is personally, I think Nick Greenwood did a better job. There's more creativity in the image, just so all the detail is in it. But
I mean,
we were
I
getting a
think
lot of
that's all. I think that's all to taste. I do feel I like Nick Greenwood's style a lot, so I'm very biased. I say I like Nick's take on it better. But I mean, they all for different reasons. Yours sells this whole like alien world versus Outgun sells more of like an action movie, kind of like feel.
yeah. And so that was one controversy. And eventually, the company that published that game had to make public statements telling people to stop harassing us. They knew perfectly well that our illustration predated theirs by about 4 years. But eventually, we just turned off the ad. It was annoying.
Easier.
Yeah. That campaign is over. They did very well. I think they crossed $200,000, which is very good.
Awesome.
Yeah. One of our new ads is showing off one of the 6 adventures we'll talk about here in a second, the Retroverse Chronicles. And Retroverse Chronicles is my take on the idea of retro high tech. Us obviously we know that steampunk, atomic punk, diesel punk. Do you have a favorite, by the way, between the punks? And I won't even go into detail much. I hate the term punk, but let's go past that.
I mean, yeah, I grew up considering myself a punk growing up. I would say though, if I had to pick one of those ones, I love Cyberpunk. I used to play Cyberpunk forever ago. It was one of like my first games I used to run for my friends. But I definitely like Cyberpunk a lot. I mean, steampunk's cool. I think it's all really neat. I just like the Cyberpunk feel to things a lot more.
I like aspects of them. I'm gonna say this. So I don't like the term steampunk. I don't like the term biopunk. I don't mind so much, but steampunk, diesel punk, I'm like, the problem I have with those was the fact that people were taking other fictions and dumping it and saying, well, you're steampunk now. I'm like, no, it's not. It never was. Like when someone would say that H.G. Wells stories that were steampunk, I'm like, no, they're not. They were speculative science fiction. They were written in the Victorian age. It's
Mm.
not steampunk. And then the other thing I hate is the fact that everything got steampunked even outside. Steampunk was very specific. When you get down to the specifics, it was Victorian England age high tech stuff. But then Weird West got dumped into steampunk.
Yeah.
Diesel punk got dumped into steampunk. And so as a result, their way of compensating the community was to create 20 new punks, which is a horrible solution to the whole thing.
Yeah, like
Uh,
we have a weird Wild West because I love Weird Wild West and I hate that it just gets thrown into steampunk. But we have a Weird
yeah,
Wild West adventure coming up with this as well.
I love Weird West. Now,
Yeah.
for example, Taurus is is actually cross genre. I say people steampunk because it's just easier to say it's steampunk than to explain to people because that it's technically a hybrid of three different punks. It's a steampunk, diesel punk, atomic punk setting because all three are aspects are at work. But because it's not set in Earth, I can kind of play with that. My favorite is I think I'm a big fan of diesel punk. I'm
Mhm.
becoming more a fan of diesel punk more and more. Cyberpunk I like. My issue with cyberpunk is that same thing. It's way too broad because now you have a spectrum of cyberpunk. You have kind of postmodern cyberpunk, which is stuff that's cyberpunk that's today dealing with today's issues. And then you have the retro cyberpunk, which is what is getting a massive resurgence, which is this 80s opinion of what cyberpunk was. And those are very different settings. They are very different. Like if you look at,
Yeah,
say, something like Cyberpunk 2077 or Blood Dragon or something like that, and then you look at Ghost in the Shell, they are cyberpunk, but they're very, very different cyberpunk ideas.
very much so.
But I, even though I love atomic punk, I prefer Art Deco. Now, people kind of think that Art Deco is part of atomic punk, but it's not. Atomic punk for me is that 50s idealism of what the future was. It's that metropolis type of thing. Art Deco is an aspect of that, but I love Art Deco sci-fi. And the issue is a lot of people are trying to shove Art Deco sci-fi into one of these punks, but it doesn't really work because Art Deco is not diesel punk because it doesn't have that industrial diesel look. And it's not atomic punk because it doesn't have the flying saucer curved chrome screens. So it doesn't fall into any of these. And that's why I say the fact that technically Taurus has a lot of Art Deco because all of the trains, most of the trains were built with an Art Deco aesthetic in mind. So you look at some of the trains in Taurus, they're very much Art Deco. But that was the other question. The
Would
other
you say it's
question,
more deco punk then?
yeah, but no, thankfully, no, Deco Punk hasn't entered the vernacular. Actually, probably has.
No, it
The
has.
worst,
100% it has. It's in the last like 2 years, it's popping up everywhere, and
uh,
yeah,
you know,
it leaves a weird
what,
taste.
you know, the worst punk of all, Omni Punk.
I don't
When
even
you're
know Omni
too
Punk.
when you're too lazy to think of a punk, you call it Omni Punk, which is everything. It's everything that you can't define becomes omnipunk. And I just want to slap the shit out of the person who said that. Anyway, the final one, the controversy here before we get back into it, is that we're running ads about Retroverse Chronicles. Now, Retroverse Chronicles is based off of uh, this illustration in Ultramodern once again. And once
Great
again,
illustration.
yeah, which is fantastic. Now, Nick has admitted that it was inspired from Tales from the Loop. Um, and the funny thing is that that ad's now running. So of course now we're getting people saying that it looks like Tales of the Loop with the serial numbers filed off. I went from a visual standpoint. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, absolutely. But from that standpoint, we are trying to go take the setting in a new direction. I like the visual style. Somebody said it's somebody me asked the question: if I already have Scythe, do I need this? And I answered, well, Scythe is a board game, and this is a tabletop game. And it depends on your application. The settings are also very different. Scythe is set in an alternate history 1920s Europe, and Retroverse Chronicles is set in an alternate 1980s United States. So once again, very different. But you get that prejudging. People look at it and they want to make that snap decision. I'll never deny that Tales from the Loop is not an inspiration from a visual standpoint, but we're hoping once we write the setting and the rules in the game and so forth, we're going to see other things. There's another illustration, which I'll post here, which is also from Retroverse Chronicles. And that's this image right here. This is also from Retroverse, but this does not look in any way like from Tales from the Loop. This is an entirely unique illustration that Nick has done. This is also from Ultramodern. This was the second primary illustration that I'm using for inspiration. The fact of and the fact that this image and the other image are both part of the same setting should give you people an indication of how kind of unique this setting is going to be. Hopefully,
Well, there's a
but
lot
that's
of
retro.
yeah, there's a lot of tribalism. So people when they see like I know this from this, so that must be the original. Like that's what I like the most, and that's hard when you're like, you're taking a lot of like inspiration from things, but you're still making your own thing. Like Retroverse Chronicles, like well, actually, what we're talking about are all these things. Why don't you go into Retroverse Chronicles like a bit more? Like,
Okay,
you know, I
okay,
know
so
your
let's where's
inspirations on that, but yeah, we're back to the adventures.
yeah, go back to the page. Where I do have a image of Retroverse here. One second, where is it? Probably near the bottom. Um, I know I have that, which is just that, but that's Retroverse Chronicles. Retroverse Chronicles is set in a alternate history 1980s, with the alternate cut-in being around the 1940s. It implies the fact that when they opened up the UFO in Roswell, they found these devices that can implant a very specific inspiration in people to build something. It's kind of like, imagine you're in the 1800s, you find a device that implants in you the specific knowledge in how to build um, a computer, right? But you know how to build the computer, but that's all you know how to build. You don't know how to build all the things that led up to that, or things that were even more outlandish. What if you're in the 1600s and you knew how to build a power armor? And you knew how to build that power armor, but that's all you knew how to build, because that was the specific knowledge that was implanted in you. And so they find these items, and they call them spark plugs. Why? Because they give you the spark of creativity and they kind of plug into you. So they're called spark plugs. Um, and these spark plugs, one of them is specifically made to create itself. So one person, so one of these spark plugs that they find gives someone the inspiration to build these very spark plugs, which means only one person in history could build them. And because he was there, because a part of this programming drives you to build these things, he builds hundreds of them, each of them with random things. Now, in the story that's in it, one of the inventions is a cross universe gateway, which he escapes from and enters our universe, where he gives the main character this plug. And at that point, this guy doesn't know what it is, and he ends up gaining the knowledge to make these spark plugs, which then makes him the single most wanted person in the universe, because he's the only person that knows how to make these things. In the story that's included, he ends up fleeing back into this universe. And by the time he does that, it's actually in the early 1980s. And by then, the world has become somewhat post apocalyptic. There's not been a nuclear war, but these machines have, and these machines and these technologies and these ideas have completely reshaped the landscape. We still have a technological level. It's still the 1980s, but we're seeing these weird offshoots of technology, giant robots, genetic engineering, and so forth. So with the other image that I showed with the car, there were several things that lead it. One is they've made a genetically engineered slave race that look like elves. You can create biological engines. And so you see this old 1960s, 70s car that has a biological engine and it can fly. So you're seeing all of this stuff. So that's what Retroverse Chronicles is about. It is a campaign guide, unlike the other ones here, which are adventures. But that's Retroverse Chronicles. It's gonna. I'm really hoping that we blow through some stretch goals so we can really dive into the visual aesthetic. Yeah, there's no doubt it's got to have that type of inspiration. Right, but like I said, it was done by 2019. When someone said it's inspired by these other ones, I went, no, this illustration, this idea was made a long, long, long time ago. But yeah, no denying that Stellan Stalsberg. But that also being said, I have seen a lot of artists, and this is the other thing we've talked about. When someone says, "Oh, you're ripping off this artist," I go, "No, I'm ripping off this artist, which is older." Right? And I remember I had a friend with Chris Brown. We went to see the Puppet Masters, that old late 90s film, and all the reviews are like, "Oh, this is just ripping off body Invasion of the Body Snatchers," and Chris Brown would get so angry, like, "No, it's based on it's based on a Robert A. Heinlein novel, which predates all of those." All of those stories was ripping off that. So when someone says, "Man, this John Carter film just seems like a ripoff of so many movies," and then you want to smack that person, but no, all those movies ripped off John Carter. It's not our fault that we can't get an education. But yes, anyway, that's Retroverse Chronicles. There's no denying there's going to be some inspiration, but you know what? I don't care. If you want to hate it for that, go ahead and hate it. Anyway, let's talk about this one.
Yeah, we
Oh,
own our inspirations here, though, and that's the thing, because we love media, we love content, so I think it's a good thing. Oh,
well, when it comes to
Madness at
certain,
Megalomart.
when it comes to inspiration, I always get annoyed when someone tells me I got inspired by something that wasn't true. Like Amethyst used to get so many accusations. He goes like, you stole this, you stole this, you stole this. I went, no. Um, Amethyst was directly inspired by the film Dragon Slayer from the 80s. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if Dragon Slayer was set in the future? That's it. So if someone says, oh, you ripped off of what the hell is it called? Ring of Fire. I said no. Amethyst actually was conceived originally in the late 80s. But anyway, so let's talk about. Go ahead, Madness at the Megalomart.
I had the idea for Madison Megalomart when I was working retail during the pandemic, and just dealing with a lot of like intense people on both sides. And so I just thought, how cool would it be if, you know, if I could just be sucked into like whatever like hellscape world, and I worked at say like a Walmart, or here we have a Canadian Tire, you know, and then you're just equipped with what you have in the store, you and your party, and you need to survive this fantasy hellscape world with just what you have. Um, it's the Karens from hell kind of like, dream fantasy if you've ever worked retail before, where all the customers are actually demonic entities and you are tasked to survive this world and find a way to get back. You are sucked into hell. There's some inspirations obviously from Army of Darkness, just the whole being sucked into like this fantasy world, but he has a shotgun. Some of that comes into play because obviously I love Army of Darkness, but there's a lot of, it's just an open world exploration of this, a hell world that's set in like a fantasy style setting, but you have
But
everything you
yeah,
normally would have in a Walmart. Like, and you have shotguns, you have fishing lines, you have whatever you want. So your players have a lot of tools, which
it's
relies
Walmart,
on a
so
lot of
it's
the cool
armed to the
stuff,
teeth.
armed to the teeth, and you have like cars in the parking lot. 100% Black Friday. Like I was working. I literally wrote the idea for this down. I was working Boxing Day at a store called Birch and Boar here in Prince George, and we were just getting slammed with people. And we had because of the pandemic, you only have 3 people in the store at a time because it's a very tiny store, and then people were not happy waiting to get in. And it's like, I don't make, I can't make the rules, but I'm just like, man, how cool would it be if you, if I could just
So
like
is the
vent
idea is
all
that
out.
this Walmart, this entire Walmart, the buildings and everything, basically gets sent to hell, right?
The entire thing, like how it opens up. This is not a spoiler. How it opens up is that I had a little small backstory. My dad owned a furniture store, and we never had new technology. We'd have whatever technology wouldn't sell. One of the things we had was a Betamax. Uh, Never had any like good tapes for it, but we had like 6 movies. One was Forrest Gump. But anyways, the idea was that someone returns to this Walmart a Betamax with the tape stuck inside of it. The people play it, and it's basically this like magical spell gets released. I don't want to go too much into too many details, and you are essentially, the entire store itself is sucked into hell, and the people who are there get kind of possessed, uh, like demonoid style monsters, and you have to either escape the Walmart or fortify it. And it's up to the players to decide how they want to try and return. Or this is a really good way to kick off a whole campaign if you wanted, of like, we're just going to stay here and we're going to shotgun blast our way through this like horde of demons a la Doom, and then try our best to survive. Or we'll find a way to actually get back to our 1997, which I set it in Seattle. So
Cool.
yeah.
I have the unfortunate knowledge of the fact that from 1992 to 2018, I worked every single Boxing Day, and so I have stories. I've never been
This is written for
assaulted or
you,
anything.
Chris. This is written for all
Yeah,
the retail warriors who survived a Boxing Day or a Black
I
Friday.
um, I- I've okay. So Boxing Days were pretty bad. However, there were. I mean, I what did I do? I manned the launch of the Sega Genesis, the PlayStation 2, with the Wii, PS3, Xbox 360. The hardest one to do was the Wii because the Wii never sent enough stock, so it was always just a shit show. But yeah, it's fun. I'll tell you the weirdest, biggest launches: the VHS release of Titanic and Pokemon Yellow, and when Furbies came in. Those were the biggest annoying things. Anyway, so now we're going to talk about Phantom Stage. Back to you.
Phantom Stage. Yeah. Oh, it's another one of mine. Actually, I got this idea from talking with Chris. We live up near a place called Barkerville, and Barkerville's got a lot of strange, fun history. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to write some ghost stories in the Wild West, set kind of like not set in Barkerville, but it's inspired by the Barkerville stories of like a town. There's a huge gold rush going on. There are some colorful characters. There's a lot of gangs coming through the town. Uh, rich people are controlling the city, and it's just you are presented with the thing of trying to like solve a problem where the theater in town, the golden jewel of this place, this city, is considered to be haunted, and so you are being tasked to clear it out, and becomes this like ghost hunting kind of like mystery where there's like I said, once again, there's gangs and big money involved and gunfights. It's a classic, like to me, weird Wild West story. And I wrote the initial plans for this at Grand Con like a year ago in Grand Prairie, talking to Mr. Diaz here. But it's yeah, I can't delve into too much because it's definitely a lot of like spoilers would going out. But if you like ghost stories, you like the eerie, weird, and Wild West, you like the idea of like deco style trains, and like the idea of a gold rush, and like just a general firing a 6-shooter with your players and having a good old like tumbleweed kind of fight in the desert. This is the adventure for you. It's be taking about 3 sessions to get through, and it's just a lot of fun. And also I create a lot of like the world around us. You can it's a good kickoff. You want to start running more adventures in this area as well. So like all the adventures I've written, they're all like campaign starters. You can really take them and like this is now your world a little bit.
So Barker, I haven't been to Barkerville in like a year.
We should go and take some pictures.
Well, if you guys ever want to know what Barkerville is like, I did a review for a game called Grimslingers, for a board game called Grimslingers. You can find it on my DSS Machina channel. It's also on Dice Tower. That was shot at Barkerville on Canada Day, and it freaking snowed because Barkerville is apparently in the same altitude as Mount Everest. But but that's Barkerville, and I've played with that as well in a way. Barkerville was the inspiration of the town the players visit at the beginning of the Paradise Adventure in Affinity. That map, that was basically inspired by Barkerville. It's not the main setting; it's just the precursor to that. Okay, so we'll talk about Threshold, which is the difference between Noah and Threshold. They're both science fiction. They're both, I can call them sci-fi horror stories. This one's much more of a sandbox. Threshold is an adaptation of a really old campaign setting I created called Pathfinder. Someone's going to say, "Oh, Pathfinder, just like the Pathfinder." Like, oh no, this Pathfinder is from 1994, so it very much predates, and that's the reason why we changed the name, is because obviously we can't call it Pathfinder anymore. And this is a setting that was a very much the culmination of all the loves I had of what. There isn't really a name for it because everyone keeps on saying if you create this, it's just a ripoff of Alien. I'm like, no, it doesn't. These things have been around for a while. There's 100 of them. It's created a genre, this dark space. One of the greatest examples that someone's going to call it like space punk for all I know, but one of the greatest examples was the production designer on Red Dwarf, and he called it tramp steamer sci-fi. And I thought it was one of the greatest terminologies. I was using that for a lot. It's like, this is a tramp steamer sci-fi. The idea of it's industrial, it's commercial, it's blue collar workers in space type of thing. And that's Alien and all the other derivatives that came out, and then the original sci-fi stuff that happened before and after. The idea of blue collar workers. I mean, one of the other greatest examples, one of my favorite films, which is starting to age quite badly, Outland, which was obviously, once again, people go, visually, it's very much like Alien. It has the same production designer. It has the same same composer. But of course, there's nothing paranormal. There's nothing alien about it. The ultimate enemy is still man. That was basically its tagline. Great. I still think it's a good movie. Peter Hyams is underappreciated. But fuck, does his son not know how to act? It almost spoils the film. Sean Connery's son is one of the worst actors I've ever seen. You're like, oh my God, this kid is painful to watch, but it's a
Yeah,
great
it
movie. I
felt
still
very
think
out of place. It just Connery was like he was selling hard, and the kid is just
he's only
staring
in it for
into the camera.
he's only in it for 2 scenes. He's only in it for 2
Yeah.
scenes, thankfully. But it's just like, wow, can we fast forward this scene? I know this is his impetus, but whatever. So
I left a great
Threshold.
review on IMDb that I believe that to make that movie more palatable, I said the kid must have been a robot, and the guy had just like had like a robot son to make himself more relaxed. Because it just made more
Yes,
sense that this kid was just an animatronic Chuck E. Cheese style creature.
The novel adaptation by Alan Dean Foster, because Alan Dean Foster adapts every science fiction movie, is actually really good. If you ever get a chance to watch it, so read it. It's actually good luck. I found it used. I was like, oh my god, I'm buying this. Anyway, so Threshold is based off of this old Pathfinder setting, where the idea being that mankind goes through a bunch of really big wars in space. Not with any aliens. Aliens in the original setting never show up, and mankind continues to expand and expand and expand, and then they go to war, and then everything collapses, and then they expand and expand out again, and then they go to war, and everything collapses. So it's about 800 years in the future, and the last war was so crippling, so devastating that most planets were strip mined. The really ultra rare resources that humanity needs to build the reactors and the spaceships can no longer be found naturally through their colonies. So the only way for them to survive is to scavenge all the old wrecks from 800 years of warfare. And so they create a commission for people to send their ships out, and they create these multi-role space tugs, kind of like, and Nostromo would be one that would be in this category. But instead of going out on a mission to grab a mining vessel, they would go out randomly to a solar system and search for wrecks. And unfortunately, because you have 800 years of history, these ships generally have their own history. Yeah, and every genre was out there. We had genetic engineering, we had AI, we had robots, which is kind of AI. We played with aliens on occasion, but aliens were always like, there wasn't an alien menace. There was just, there's a unique type of alien on this one. There's a weird thing here. We had ghosts, like everything. It was a massive sandbox. We ran this adventure for about 3 years. But the idea, the fact, the main characters were privateers. They would take jobs, they would see smugglers, and they would constantly try to hide from hide from the greater authority, which were these three governments that were running basically human space. And then once again, there were no real defined aliens. There were bandits called jackers and so forth. And the hilarious thing later is that people would go to that old homebrew website and go, "Oh my god, this is totally like Serenity and Firefly." And like, yeah, great. Did you notice when the website went up? The website went up in 1995, so I'm pretty sure I got them beat. And the funny thing is, people are going to look at it and go, "Oh, this is a ripoff of Firefly." I was like, yeah, it's too bad. It's 25 years old by this point. But yeah, but Threshold has been adapted slightly, so now it involves something happening to hyperspace, which causes hyperspace gateways to collapse and isolating these distant Earth colonies. And so there's this cluster of space called the Demigod cluster, which has like 20, 30 worlds that ends up losing contact with the rest of the human race, and they are forced to survive on their own for a good century before they finally find a way to make a ship that'll transport them to a nearby cluster, and then reopen a new hyperspace gateway so they can try to reconnect with humanity. But when they do, they find out the rest of humanity is now extinct, and once again, the same thing, all of their ships are still floating in space, abandoned. The colonies are abandoned, so no one really knows why. And so as the population from this demigod cluster filters back into the rest of human controlled space, they're coming to terms with what's happened, and then this weird alien menace that's starting to rise up. So it's very much a sandbox. The dungeon is, like I said, people will know this, the fact that Ultramodern, the main core book, has a setting called Threshold. This is a huge expansion of that. Threshold's about 20, 30 pages. This is going to be about 100, 150 pages, where we're going to explore all the ships. It's not going to be, here are some examples of ships and here are 3 illustrations. We're going to show a lot of ships, a lot of planets, a lot of illustrations of these planets, go into details in the setting, and create the sandbox for GMs to create. And so we have this mix and match dungeon system where you can make your own spaceship plans. And so we'll have that where you can create your own, and we'll have pre-configured ones for that as well. So Threshold, different than Noah. Noah is much more of a cloistered psychological horror story, where Threshold is more of a sandbox.
And
Noah
also
has a more Noah has a more definitive storyline, where Threshold is a bit more abstract because it lets the GM tell their own story.
yeah, I would say like the big differences are like the blue collar versus this is a colony ship. Like it's a lot more. The weights
Yeah,
are different, and so on the surface they'll seem like when you look at just like the surface of it, they are like, oh yeah, it's a space survival, but it's the feeling of them both is very, very different. Like I said,
yeah.
Noah opens up where you could turn it into a campaign if you want, as you and this crew continue to do whatever you want to do. But
Oh, yeah.
that's at that point it's all yours. But like this is Threshold is itself is actually a fully contained campaign setting. You know,
So that brings us to Clonefall. That's his.
well,
No,
we talked about
yeah,
Clonefall already, but we can go into
yeah.
more.
Oh no, yeah, we talked about Clonefall. Yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah, I mean, that's Clonefall. Which one we haven't talked about yet?
Well, we've done Clonefall and we did Echoes of Noah, we did Madness, we
Yeah.
did Phantom Stage, we've done Retroverse, and we've done Threshold.
Okay. So there's two DLCs that are getting expanded. One's called Game Feats, which is getting heavily just got re-released and getting heavily expanded. So anyone who gets Ultramodern will get this DLC. This is a set of mostly completely worthless game-inspired feats for people. They are not game balanced in any way. They are meant to be fun and enjoyable. The second one is Desert Power, which is obviously inspired by Dune. This one we are hoping to expand, but when we do, I'm hoping to expand it with other sci-fi settings that it's not just Dune. So adding in rules for Mad Max and a few other things. So it's going to be kind of once again a sandbox of rules for anyone who wants to create various sci-fi settings. The only thing is that it won't have the rules for the Drift, which is this segment of Amethyst, the new book I'm writing. There's a huge section where the sands flow like water, and there's a whole industry that's not going into Desert Power because that's going to be an Amethyst.
Mhm.
And then we have that, and then we have Clonefall, and then Ultramodern. So yeah, we actually have this is what the leather wrap version looks like.
Looks fantastic.
Yeah, I love like this is kind of neat, that the leather and the cloth. I love the sprayed edge, which is not something that I never saw as a possibility. So that's something I'm looking forward to. I think it's a neat idea, and then the new logo as well.
Yeah,
So
the new logo is very important.
yeah, we won't get into detail. I think we're gonna close up here soon. We don't want to run too long. Wait,
Nope,
anything you all?
I would say that yeah, we'll have some video content going out over the next couple of weeks, but please like and share our BackKit links. Like the faster that grows, the more we can do, and the bigger this project does for us, the more content we can really do. We have some really interesting stretch goals planned for it, um, and we really appreciate everyone who was able to come here, talk with us, ask some questions, and support what we're doing. And yeah, it means a lot to Chris. I know, and I know it does a lot to me as well.
Are we doing the stream next Thursday? Because obviously we can't do it next Friday because we have the art festival. Are you in town for next Thursday?
I find out today how the move's going to go, but I'm in. We had talked about doing it for either Thursday or Wednesday, but I'm down for Thursday. Do a stream there. We can debut one of the trailers. I'm going to send you a couple of them I just finished today. And maybe you can put out one today.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, we'll see if we're doing them next Thursday. If not, we'll do one the next week after. But if our next one, we're going to talk about the actual campaign. Show people the pages. We should have the campaign pages done by then, and we'll also show the pledge levels. We might
Yeah.
release the prices then as well.
I also think it'd be kind of fun to, we could create some characters, get some people in chat. We can make some characters for people.
Cool.
Just because I think one of the coolest things about Ultramodern, if you haven't played it at all in any of this, any of the versions of the Redux or the original, is that the ladder system that you did is really really fun. It makes for really fun character development.
Yeah, no, it's something that it was inspired by the hero system in D20 Modern. For the people who don't know D20 Modern, it had a very unusual non D&D idea of approaching things where you picked a very generic hero, strong hero, dexterous hero, smart hero, wise hero. You got some basic stuff, and you only really picked your life when you got to second level and you got to pick your prestige class. And so all the classes, like all of these classes, both the higher classes and the main class, only went up to 10. which means you had to pick a prestige class and you had to then move between picking features from one to the other. And it was a neat idea. The only issue is that you basically can never start the game at first level. And D&D was something that where you should be good at first level. And so we created the ladder system, which was this alternative, which is this optional system where it gave you a basic ability at first level. And then when you advanced, instead of taking a feat, you could, or an ability bonus, you could take a ladder ability, which was slightly more powerful than the feat or the ability bonus that you would get. And so it created this kind of theme that you could approach. The biggest differences with them is that although it's not being the new version of D&D may play with us a bit, but it allows you to switch out your attack modifiers. So if you could use dexterity for all your melee attacks, you could use strength for all your ranged attacks, you could use wisdom for all your ranged attacks, you can use intelligence for your ranged attacks. So it allows you to create a unique character, and you're not being forced into a little narrow path. But what do you got plans for? We're talking about today. I actually hopefully think I got another podcast in about 20 minutes. I'm talking to How to RPG Frederick Wheeler. He used to be How to D&D, and let's just say the OGL really ticked him off.
I believe it. For me, I got go on. Sorry.
No, he's anyway. He's coming up at 12:30. He's renamed his page How to RPG, and he's still doing his content through there.
I'm meeting with someone about our Roll20. We're hoping to see if we can get some information about getting us on Roll20. I'll get some set answers today, and then after that, I have a phone meeting with a YouTuber called Mage's Musings, and then I'm just going to continue to make some content for the rest of the day, and then we'll have some more TikToks going out. We'll have some more YouTube videos going out over the next over this weekend.
Coolness. And I said I'm gonna do some more streams anyway. I want to go back to do working on streams on 5.5 and talking about Amethyst as well, because that's actually what I'm writing on at the moment. But all right, guys, well, we will end it there. You guys have yourself a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And any other final words, Liam?
No, just like I said, anytime you guys share, even if you can't follow it yourself for whatever reason, that just helps us a lot. We really appreciate everyone. Our fans seem to be the best, and really appreciate it.
All right, cool. All right, guys, you guys take care, and thank you, William.